They're quite personal. Shiloh is a very private person. Something had changed when Shiloh Jolie-Pitt left the dance studio in April 2025. The girl who used to wear only suits and insist on being called John was no longer there. Someone who bore a striking resemblance to a young Angelina Jolie took her place. It was the same sharp blue eyes. Identical lips. It even felt the same when she smiled. However, this change went beyond appearances. In ways that seem nearly unfathomable, scientists claim she acquired Angelina's dominant features. Everyone who believed they knew this family was surprised by what transpired next. Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie made a shocking choice in 2006 that made headlines around the globe. They decided to conceive their first biological kid in Swakopmund, a sleepy Namibian seaside town, rather than in Los Angeles, London, or Paris. The selection was not arbitrary. They made the calculated decision to get away from the media frenzy that followed them everywhere. Namibia possessed something that Hollywood was unable to provide: control, distance, and silence. By bringing out police and expelling foreign photographers, the government even contributed to protecting their privacy. By April of that year, the couple had discreetly checked into a private resort, which the region's governor described as an honor. Local police and bodyguards ensured that no strangers approached. Then their daughter was born on May 27, 2006. Shiloh Jolie-Pitt was her given the name. She immediately became a citizen of Namibia. Shiloh became one of the few famous kids who was born with two citizenships as a result. Hospital employees were required to sign non-disclosure agreements because of the extreme security. 4 or more photographers who attempted to enter covertly were deported. It was a birth that was both secret and significant. Her name was a story in itself. The Hebrew word Shiloh signifies Messiah or peaceful one. It isn't merely a baby name book. It comes from an old prophecy that was associated with leadership and peace. It was even more significant to Angelina. Her parents had intended to name their first child Shiloh years prior, but the child never came. The miscarriage ended the pregnancy. She honored that memory by naming her daughter Shiloh. Nouvelle, her middle name, translates to new in French. A fresh beginning, a fresh work. And word spread fast after the name was made public. Overnight, baby name patterns shifted. Shiloh was the name that everyone wanted to give their child. Things weren't easy to begin with in the clinic. Angelina required a C-section because Shiloh was in a breech position. The anxiety turned to laughter, even though her doctor had flown in from Los Angeles specifically to perform the treatment. Later, Angelina claimed that she sobbed because she laughed so much. She was on the phone with her mother, who was also in the hospital using a false identity. Both women were emotional and drugged. Brad used a portable camera to record the entire event. He later described it as a serene moment they would never forget. However, they continued to express gratitude. Using words. Following the delivery, Brad and Angelina gave $300,000 to Namibian maternity hospitals. Additionally, they promised $15,000 for a community center and local school. What may have been a media catastrophe turned into a peaceful, giving moment that Namibia will never forget. Then an even more surprising event took place. Shiloh requested to be called John when she was barely 2 years old. In 2008, Brad disclosed this in an Oprah interview. It wasn't a joke. When someone used Shiloh's given name, she corrected them. She responded, "I'm John," if someone said Shiloh. She occasionally desired to be called Peter, after the Peter Pan character. It was appreciated by her family. Brad would ask John whether he wanted orange juice at breakfast. No, she would respond. It lasted for years. They didn't hide it either. They adored her, backed her, and did as she said. The public took note. The press followed suit. Then came the clothes. Dresses didn't appeal to Shiloh. Absolutely not. She desired ties, suits, and tracksuits. She made her fashion choices obvious even as a toddler. According to Angelina, she wore Montenegro fashion. Jackets, slacks, and no skirts. Wearing a black suit and tie, Shiloh walked the red carpet alongside her brothers when she was 8 years old. She appeared even more assured with her short hairstyle. It wasn't just for show, either. "I want to be a boy," Angelina once declared. She believes she is a brother. None of it was concealed by Angelina. She discussed her daughter's decisions candidly. She stated in a 2010 interview with Vanity Fair that Shiloh desired to be a male. She didn't mince words. She just spoke the truth. She stated in a different interview that nothing should be left up to interpretation. She wants a boy cut for her hair. For a time, she preferred to be called John. The public was shaken by these remarks. No other A-list celebrity had discussed a child's gender identity so openly. Angelina refused to give up. She demonstrated her belief in unconditional love. Not everybody cheered. Angelina was accused by several media publications of encouraging Shiloh to be non-conforming with her gender. Online forums were ablaze with conjecture. Did Brad come up with the idea? Did Angelina have any influence? According to rumors, the pair couldn't agree on how to deal with it. Brad, however, remained steadfast. He declared his unwavering support for Shiloh. Brad will always be on Shiloh's side if she chooses to identify as male. The rumbling continued, though. For Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, and their 6 kids, everything changed on September 14, 2016. Instead of being a tranquil journey, their private jet flight from France to Los Angeles devolved into a nightmare. Before they even boarded, Brad was already furious, according to FBI records and court documents. One of the children had argued with him. The situation worsened after the jet took off. Angelina was accused by him of taking sides with the kids too much. The dispute soon became physical. Jolie claimed that after dragging her into the restroom, Brad grabbed her by the shoulders and head and pushed her against a wall. The 8 to 15-year-old children intervened to keep their mother safe. Brad is accused of hitting one of them in the face and strangling the other during the confusion. However, it didn't end there. He poured beer on her and then red wine and beer on the children, according to Angelina's court documents. They were left sobbing, covered in blankets, and feeling frightened and unsettled. Brad refused to let them depart immediately, even after the jet touched down. For 20 more minutes, they sat there, horrified and trapped. The incident's news went viral. A few days later, Brad Pitt was the subject of an investigation by the FBI and Los Angeles Child Welfare Services for abusing children. Because it occurred aboard a plane, which is covered by federal law, the FBI became involved. Jolie told them that Brad had been drinking, but not intoxicated, and showed them pictures of her hand with a burn-like lesion and bruising on her elbow. According to her, the hostility had begun before they had even arrived at the airport. Although several of her assertions were supported by the study, no charges were ultimately brought. The explanations were never given in full. Until 2022, when Angelina filed a lawsuit to obtain the release of the complete FBI report, the majority of the information remained confidential. The severity of the situation was made clear by that lawsuit. The fact that no criminal charges had been brought startled many. On September 19, 2016, 5 days after the flight, Angelina filed for divorce. According to her attorney, it was for the family's health. The media continued to use such phrase. She requested Brad to have limited visitation rights and complete physical custody of the children. All throughout the world, the abrupt and violent divorce made headlines. Following the filing, Jolie's team requested seclusion and remained silent. In a brief statement, Brad expressed his grief and said he was thinking about the children. A romance that had begun in 2004 came to an end. On Mr. and Mrs. Smith's set. After 2 years of marriage, they had been together for 12 years. Love lost wasn't the only reason for the breakup. It was the start of years of court cases, custody disputes, and public drama. Shiloh could have been the most impacted of all the kids. She was Brad and Angelina's first biological daughter. They were close friends before to the journey. After that, things were different. Their bond waned. According to reports, their relationship is still shaped by the harm done that day in the air. Shiloh Jolie-Pitt's life was everything but typical from the time of her birth in May 2006. In order to dodge the media frenzy in the US, her parents, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, decided to birth her in Namibia. However, it continued even after traveling halfway around the globe. Special licenses were required for journalists, and the hospital was surrounded by armed guards. All for the sole purpose of preventing someone from taking a baby picture. Shiloh was unable to adjust to life. Before she could even walk, she was thrust into the public eye. Nothing changed when she got older. Everything had to be well planned, whether it was a simple shopping run or a trip to the park. Fake automobiles. Security groups. At times, her parents had to get in front of the cameras themselves to obstruct photos or ask the photographers to move away. Privacy was no longer the only concern. It turned into a battle to save childhood itself. Other famous people also took note. Jennifer Garner and Halle Berry joined the movement to enact legislation that would penalize anybody who snapped unapproved photos of famous youngsters. New regulations were passed in California. It was at least somewhat helpful. There was more tranquility at home or in private areas. However, as soon as they went outside, the conflict resumed. At one point, Angelina called it ridiculous, but it wasn't innocuous. The impacts were real. Shiloh has said that she is uncomfortable in the spotlight. In actuality, it never offered her an option. Her education also differed from that of other children. She seldom lingered in one spot for too long. Her parents were always traveling, visiting refugee camps, running charities, and making movies. Thus, school came after them. The tutors they employed accompanied the family on their travels. She would occasionally be homeschooled. At other occasions, she would attend short-term international schools. Her classroom might be in Cambodia one week and Los Angeles the next. However, there was something potent about that type of instruction. Shiloh read more than simply books on other cultures. She experienced them firsthand. She traveled to her brother's birth countries, participated in local celebrations, and studied languages. She spent time in Namibia, Ethiopia, Cambodia, and other places where her family has origins. She taught more than just reading and math. They were about justice and the planet, as well as history. She saw suffering in addition to beauty throughout it all. She traveled to war-torn areas to visit schools her mother had constructed. She had a close-up look at poverty. She was altered by that. Things were equally layered at home. 6 children, including Shiloh. Pax was born in Vietnam in 2003, Zahara arrived from Ethiopia in 2005, and Maddox was born in Cambodia in 2001. The twins, Knox and Vivian, were born in France in 2008, followed by Shiloh in 2006. They adopted 3. The family had 3 children. However, they all received the same upbringing. Every culture is valued. Every child is allowed room to develop. Zahara and Shiloh are particularly close. They attend parties together, and according to friends, Zahara influenced Shiloh's daring sense of style. The oldest, Maddox, studied in South Korea for a while. Broadway is what Vivian dreams about. Zahara is pursuing activism. The children have remained close to one another despite the divorce of their parents. Shiloh has been referred to as the mediator. Even when it's difficult, she is the one attempting to keep everyone in touch. Dancing was not something Shiloh Jolie-Pitt fell into by accident. She pursued it after finding it and never turned around. She entered the Millennium Dance Complex in Los Angeles at the age of 16, not as the daughter of a famous person but as a young woman prepared for the workforce. This dance studio was not like others. Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears were among the celebrities it trained. It was designed for serious people and was competitive and intense. But Shiloh was drawn to that same thing. She didn't stick out as a movie star's child when she first began attending on a regular basis in 2024, wearing sweatpants and hoodies. She melted into the background. However, everything changed as soon as the music began. She arrived early. She remained late. And even seasoned dancers gasped as she pushed through routines. She was unfazed by the pressure. It gave her energy. Kalani Marks was a major influence on her. He has choreographed for Chris Brown, Rihanna, and Beyoncé. He has a demanding, hard, quick, and incisive style. Shiloh, however, did not give up. She had trouble. She didn't succeed. Kalani described it as she went down in flames. However, she consistently returned. He eventually ceased considering her to be the child of Brad and Angelina. He respected her. He claimed that her constancy made him think of dancers who tour the world. Her name wasn't that. She was fighting. Then the videos went viral. Online, a video of her dancing to Bruno Mars and Rose SAPT went viral. Despite wearing an enormous hoodie and loose-fitting jeans, her movements were anything but casual. People were astounded by the stage presence, control, and power. "She's crazy," people commented. "This is a true skill." She improved so quickly that even experts were taken aback. The momentum continued after that. Her teachers, Hamilton Evans and Kalani, also shared her videos. She was suddenly viewed as a serious dancer rather than a famous youngster having fun. Brad Pitt was questioned about it as well. He expressed his pride. She had discovered her own thing. However, Shiloh's training methods are what really make her stand out. She doesn't choose just one instructor. She collaborates with a variety of styles, including breakdancing, jazz, hip-hop, and contemporary. Young dancers tend to be cautious. She doesn't. She practices for hours every day and dedicates additional time to strength training. She learns quickly, accepts criticism, and perseveres. On May 27, 2024, Shiloh Jolie-Pitt celebrated her 18th birthday. She submitted a formal petition to alter her name within a few hours. She didn't rely on her parents or wait for approval. She had her own lawyer. She used the money she made from modeling and personal ventures to cover all of the legal fees. Words were not as powerful as that one act. It was more than just a formality. It was an individual statement. She was moving away from her father's name's shadow. Her intentions were made apparent in the court petition. She had given up on being Shiloh Jolie-Pitt. She requested to use Shiloh Nouvelle Jolie as her legal name. Nouvelle was in homage to her mother's favorite French architect, Jean Nouvel. However, it also signaled Shiloh's separation from Brad Pitt. By August 2024, the name change was authorized, and her new name was used officially in all court records, contracts, licenses, and passports. She was the most noticeable of the Jolie-Pitt children to transform, although she wasn't the first. Additionally, the fact that this decision was made just after turning 18 demonstrated that it was not made hastily. She had been waiting years to do it. Brad Pitt was caught off guard. Close sources claim that he was distraught. At one point, he referred to Shiloh as his little peanut. Although he had hoped for a future reunion, her decision to dump Pitt felt like the last straw, a rejection not just in public but also in court. It was heartbreaking for him. He might have lost a relationship in addition to a name link. His friends say he was taken by surprise. This was more than just a name, they added. Their relationship underwent an irreversible change. According to California law, any name change must be openly announced in a newspaper for 4 weeks in a row. As a result, Shiloh's personal decision made headlines. The court case number, hearing date, and her previous and new names were printed for everyone to see. Nobody protested. However, the statement sparked a surge of media coverage. The tabloids went crazy. Every aspect was contested by fans. Shiloh remained silent the entire time. She demonstrated that she wasn't concealing by abiding by an antiquated but necessary regulation. Even in the face of scrutiny, she was taking charge of her life. In May 2025, a year later, she made yet another audacious move. Shiloh made her professional choreography debut at a prestigious fashion event in Los Angeles, but she did not use her actual name. The credits simply said, "She Jolly." Jolie's faint echo was stronger and shorter. The focus of that event, which was presented by Nita Porter and designer Isabel Morant, was Shiloh's choreography. There was no gimmick. It wasn't an act. For all the right reasons, the performance garnered media attention. Dancers Takeo Suzuki and Keone Rose performed in her piece. Shiloh choreographed a sexy, emotional routine that they all performed together. It wasn't the typical fashion show jargon, instead, it was passionate and emotional. Shiloh was seen sneaking out of the celebration to practice with her dancers. It wasn't simply her name she was lending. She was in charge of everything. Both reviewers and insiders appreciated the performance. She had a professional credit attached for the first time to true artistic expression. Luella, an independent vocalist, provided the music. The performance's beating heart was her song, Naive. The dancers moved to Shiloh's choreography while Luella sang live. It went smoothly. It was intimate. The audience was enthralled. It was deemed unforgettable by fashion editors. Entertainment media commended its uniqueness. Shiloh was more than just someone's kid that evening. She was an artist, a creative, and a choreographer. She avoided the spotlight despite all of this enthusiasm. Top agents contacted them. She was asked to choreograph pop stars' tours. Producers of reality shows made offers. She could have had her own dance series, according to one source, but she rejected the idea. Her dance videos have gone viral since she was in her early teens. However, celebrity was never the aim. She desired artistic authority. Angelina Jolie, her mother, wholeheartedly agreed with that. She informed the media that her children place a high importance on privacy. Few mother-daughter pairs in Hollywood have generated as much interest as Angelina Jolie and her daughter Shiloh. But it's more than simply family or celebrity that makes their relationship so special. They appear to have the same face. People sense a mirror rather than merely a similarity when side-by-side pictures of them appear on social media. The same lips, the same high cheekbones, the same piercing blue eyes. This has even been investigated by scientists. According to geneticists, children receive half of their DNA from each parent. However, prominent features like Jolie's lips and Angelina's cheekbones transmitted essentially unaltered. This is precisely what has occurred. From her jawline to her zygomatic arches, Shiloh's bone structure is so similar to her mother's that even their philtrums, the little groove above the lip, appear to have been copied and pasted. Furthermore, this is not only about beauty. A wave began when Angelina disclosed that she has the BRCA1 gene, which is related to cancer. Globally, testing rates have doubled. It was dubbed the Angelina Jolie effect by experts. Shiloh is now under the same genetic spotlight, but this time it's with fascination rather than terror. She is more than just a famous person's daughter. She is now a part of a larger narrative about danger, heredity, and how celebrities can influence research. The infatuation continues to develop on the internet. Fans share split images of Angelina and Shiloh on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Some from ordinary moments, some from the red carpet. When Eternals debuted in 2021, there was a viral wave. Wearing a black Versace dress and high-top sneakers, Shiloh made her appearance. The similarities came flooding in at once. Unsettling resemblances were found in old pictures of Angelina around the same age that began to circulate. Their smiles felt the same, too. A picture of young Angelina was juxtaposed with a picture of Shiloh in a dancing studio in 2024. Debates regarding which parent she most resembled were sparked by the post's explosion. The cycle appears to be restarted with each new picture. The internet is unable to stop. Then April 2025 arrived. The 18-year-old Shiloh was seen sporting two tight Dutch braids outside her dancing class in Los Angeles. Despite its simplicity, the look struck a chord. It was immediately associated by fans with Angelina's most famous portrayal as Tomb Raider's Lara Croft. Tomb Raider swept over, along with hashtags like mother, like daughter. She was dubbed Lara Croft 2.0 by some. It was a simple ensemble consisting of sneakers, sweatpants, and a hoodie. However, the picture was strong. The echo was obvious, even though she wasn't attempting to emulate her mother. Pictures from that day showed her checking her phone, munching, and joking with pals. It was authentic. It was very easy. However, there was a cultural callback that was too strong to ignore. There were other indications of change besides that time. Shiloh wore tomboy clothing for the most of her early years. For a period, she even went by John. Her parents were fully in favor of it. Angelina once declared that her children were free to express themselves and dress however they pleased. However, things started to change in 2021. Without much fanfare, Shiloh's style developed gradually. She continued to wear jeans and sweatshirts, but she accessorized them with sleek hairstyles, jewelry, and gold hoops. By 2025, she was combining style and comfort. Kalani Marks, her dance instructor, called her one of the most driven and creative students he had ever seen. Something strange occurred in Studio City, Los Angeles, on July 4, 2025. Keone Rose and Shiloh Jolie, who is now just known as Shiloh, were spotted leaving Fonet's Bakery. They weren't only picking up a food. They were wearing casual matching clothing and celebrating Independence Day together. Shiloh is wearing a sweater and sneakers, while Keone is wearing a crop tank and sweatpants. But it wasn't their attire that truly drew attention. It was the way they behaved. As they crossed the street, Keone grabbed Shiloh's waist tenderly. He had been observed removing her hair from her face earlier. Keep quiet. Private exchanges that seem to transcend friendship. They have frequently been seen together over the past year, going shopping, eating sushi, and leaving dance sessions. Every time, they appeared cozy and intimate, as though a bond was developing between them. With training in hip-hop, ballet, and contemporary dance, Keone has even performed choreographed works by Shiloh. That would be enough to get people's attention. However, after Shiloh turned 19 in May 2025, the commotion increased. When they were spotted again, Keone's arm was around her waist. It wasn't nuanced. Both paparazzi and fans saw it for what it appeared to be: romance. Nevertheless, neither of them has issued an official statement. However, people have continued to converse despite that. The love. The frequent get-togethers and their mutual love of dancing make this one of the most talked about young love stories in Hollywood at the moment. However, Sean Liu was already making waves with Shiloh before Keone Rose entered the scene. Shiloh and Sean spent nearly all of their time together in 2024 at dance studios, strolling down the street, laughing, cuddling, and simply hanging together. Chemistry was present. Some questioned whether it was more than a friendship. Sean is a well-known chef, dancer, and choreographer. He shares Shiloh's passion for rhythm and dance. However, the people who knew them best quickly corrected the record. There was no romance here. It was a relationship forged in the dance studio via extended practice sessions and creative collaboration. One of Shiloh's best friends was Sean, and she was establishing herself in the dance industry. They collaborated on projects, encouraged one another, and produced videos. Those close to them realized it was only friendship, even though the rest of the world was still in suspense. However, Shiloh's mother, Angelina Jolie, is a strong woman behind it all. Additionally, Angelina doesn't take a back seat when it comes to her children's relationships and other personal life. She's highly protective, according to sources. You have to go through Shiloh if you want to be a part of her life. It goes beyond a simple meet and greet. The screening is comprehensive. She wants to be sure that they accept Shiloh for who she truly is, not simply as the daughter of two well-known parents, and that they are sincere and polite. That process has caused some people to leave. However, those that succeed? Most of the time, they are serious. Rumor has it that Keone Rose impressed rather than merely passing. That has just added to the story's intrigue. It goes beyond youthful romance. It's about a relationship that has been put to the test by one of the most observant mothers in Hollywood.